Okay. Good morning. So earlier this week there was the State of the Union address, so I thought I'd make a bad joke first on and say this talk is going to be State of the Taproot address. I promise all the bad jokes that I make in this presentation will all be Drake gifs, and there'll be no other jokes involved. This is the State of the Taproot address 2022. I briefly wanted to say, obviously we've got friends who can't be here, who are going through some very hard times at the moment. Obviously we hope Gleb and others stay safe and they can get back to Bitcoin development activity as soon as possible. So there's a very long timeline for how we got Taproot into Bitcoin. And I wanted to highlight a few points just so that we think about some of these things when we make future soft fork proposals. A couple of points from this timeline are, like, one, it took a very long time. I mean, if you go back to 2008 when the Schnorr signature patent expired, people were talking about Schnorr like post-2008. The idea for spending from a Merkle tree of scripts dates back to 2012. There were various proposals from that point onwards. There was bit 114, there was bit 116, and these all moved the conversation forward, and it was really valuable work. But I think it's important that we remember that we do need to get the best proposals into Bitcoin, and we need to be confident and clear as a community that when we embark on a soft fork activation process, that we are as confident as possible that this is the best proposal to enable the functionality that we want, and that it's not going to be replaced by something better in the short to medium term. So obviously, like the idea of using Schnorr and Taproot came, well, the Taproot proposal was early 2018, and I certainly think, and presumably we all think, because we activated this soft fork, that the proposal that we activated was the best proposal. And if we'd have activated some of these earlier proposals, perhaps they wouldn't be used, and we'd have to continue to support them in full node implementation software like Bitcoin Core, and that is not the best way to go, certainly in my opinion. We need the best proposals into Bitcoin. We need overwhelming community support that whatever we're activating is the best possible proposal for Bitcoin. I suppose the last point I'd like to make is, like, in a decentralized community, it's just impossible to have like an authority figure that says, yes, we are going to do this soft fork. This soft fork is going ahead. Like, in a decentralized community, it's really hard. Like, anyone can stand up. I could stand up today and say, we're going to do a soft fork tomorrow for whatever, a new opcode in 6 months. Now, hopefully you would all say, Michael, you can't speak for the community. Like, no one person can say this soft fork is going to happen, which does make it tricky. I think the only solution to this problem is that things go really, really slow. And whenever an activation process starts for a soft fork, that, like, everyone knows about it. Like, if you've paid any attention to Bitcoin technology whatsoever, you know about it. And the only way you get to do that is community engagement. There was various things, Bitcoin Optech Taproot workshops, structured review, IRC meetings, tons of stuff. And this was all really, really valuable work to get the community to a point where they'd heard about Taproot, they knew the benefits, and we were all confident that it was the best proposal to get into Bitcoin. I could talk a bit about activation, but I'll leave activation. That's probably a hard talk in itself. I did promise the only bad jokes would be Drake gifs. We've got another Drake gif. This was Fiat Jaff on Twitter. Again, who knows what's going to be in the next soft fork and when it will be. Personally, I think it will be a bundle of opcodes, SIG hash flags, or simplicity, or perhaps both. That would be my prediction. But I could be totally wrong, and I have no idea how the community will converge on whatever the next soft fork is. But this is a Taproot presentation, and there's still tons of Taproot work to be done. So another tweet from Peter. This was back when Taproot activated, and he said the real work will be in building wallets protocols that built on top of it to make use of its advantages. So the real work hasn't started. I mean, he's being self-deprecating. There was 5 to 10 years of hard work from Peter and others. But yeah, there's still so much work to do for all various projects. I'll do a high-level overview of the various projects in Bitcoin and how they can leverage Taproot, or are in the process of leveraging Taproot. But there's still so much work to do to take advantage of the benefits. So Jimmy gave a great intro to Taproot itself. Obviously, before Taproot, we had, so a script is just, a script is saying how certain Bitcoin in a UTXO can be spent. Before Taproot, you'd have a very long script, such as the one below, and it would be behind a hash. So then whenever you spent from that script, you'd have to satisfy conditions from that very long script. But the key point was that it was a very long script, and whenever you spend from that script, it goes on chain. So with Taproot, as Jimmy was saying, we can now split this script up into various parts. There's the key path and there's the script path. You would expect to use the key path most of the time. So this is the single key spend. Every time you use the key path with Taproot, only a single key and a single signature are going on chain. Interestingly, you can do some multi-sig schemes, as Jimmy was saying. You can use musig, perhaps Frost, where it's a multi-sig protocol, but only a single key and a single signature are going on chain. So as far as the blockchain knows, whenever you spend from a key path, only a single key and a single signature going on chain, even if there's some fancy protocol behind how you construct that single key and single signature. The script path is when would generally be considered like the exit scenario when something goes wrong with that key path. So I've said like tap me if you need me. Generally, you'd expect to use the key path, but you can encode various different spending conditions within this Merkle tree. And if you do need them, you tap that Merkle root, you prove that the leaf script that you're spending from is in the Taproot tree, and then you satisfy the conditions of that leaf script to be able to spend from that pay to Taproot address. So yeah, this really should be imprinted on your minds, certainly if you're thinking of doing anything with Taproot or leveraging Taproot. Alternatively, if you prefer like a math formula, like that's the math formula for Taproot. Like you're committing to the internal pub key, a commitment to the Taproot tree, and that's all combined into the Taproot pub key, which is encoded into the Taproot address. Okay. So the first step, like any project, any business in the space should be thinking about is supporting sending to pay to Taproot addresses and also ideally receiving to pay to Taproot addresses. Merch has this wiki page where he's monitoring community adoption for the various projects, wallets, protocols, etc., that are supporting sending to pay to Taproot. Merch had an interesting point on Twitter where he said, it's really important that projects don't wait for other projects to start adopting Taproot. The really important thing is that if a project's looking around and going, well, no one else supports sending to a pay to Taproot address, they're not going to support receiving to a pay to Taproot address. So what Bitcoin Core and Lightning implementations have done is enable sending to any future SegWit version. There's an example of a pay to Taproot address up there. The P represents 1, so this is SegWit version 1. So whenever you see a BC1P, that is a mainnet Taproot address. And it's really important that all businesses' projects support sending to this, because if they don't support this, you can't give out a Taproot address. Like if there's a wallet that can't send money to a Taproot address, then you can't give them a Taproot address to send to. So, and as Merch said, yeah, like you can even support sending to future versions because it's the responsibility of the person giving out the Taproot address it's the responsibility of them that they don't give out Taproot addresses they can't spend from or that anyone can spend, right? So ideally, the approach everyone would take is just to support sending to any future SegWit version, even at this point, whether it's SegWit version 2, 3, 4, and who knows whether we'll have any of them, right? Again, we're back into the world of speculating future soft forks. Okay. So I talked about sending to Taproot addresses. Obviously, generating Taproot addresses and receiving to those addresses is a bit more complicated because obviously you need to know how to spend from that Taproot address, and that's a lot more complicated than just being able to send to a Taproot address. And obviously, there are various levels of support. Hopefully, people will support spending from key paths, script paths, and eventually supporting constructions of complex Taproot trees of scripts. So I think the best practice now, especially for a new wallet, is to use descriptors. Andrew Chow has introduced a new Taproot descriptor, TR. In core, it only supports spending from pub keys on both the script path, on both the key path and the script path. So if you go back to that Taproot tree diagram, even if you're spending from the Taproot tree, currently the Bitcoin Core wallet will only let you spend from a single pub key, even if you're using a script path, like a leaf script. So you're only spending from a single pub key currently. But obviously there is work being done currently such that that restriction will be lifted. And with the Core wallet and other wallets, they'll support sending from complex scripts within the tap leaf of a Taproot tree. So interestingly, script didn't change much. It's like tap script is the terminology we're using, this upgrade to script. Script doesn't actually change much. It was just that Taproot tree structure that we introduced. One of the few changes to script as part of the Taproot soft fork was the replacement for check multisig. Checksig add is not yet supported in the Bitcoin Core wallet, but there are descriptors that map to the use of this new multisig opcode, and presumably other projects will also use these updated multi-signature descriptors that support checksig add in the future. And obviously, totally different to Musig and Frost, where Musig and Frost are doing a multi-sig protocol, but only a single key and a single signature going on chain. With check multisig and with these multi-sig descriptors, all the multiple signatures and multiple keys are still going on chain. So there's lots of different areas to multi-sig, and Jimmy did a great job of going through some of those. So once we get on to enabling complex scripts, I totally agree with previous speakers. I think policy in Miniscript is going to be the way to go. Sankit is talking on Miniscript later and doing a workshop tomorrow, so I certainly recommend attending those. So as a recap on Miniscript, when you're constructing a script or tweaking a script, I think the future will be to be interacting at the policy level. So if you compare the complexity of the script to the policy, obviously policy seems a lot easier to construct and then the Miniscript compiler will generate that Miniscript for you, and that Miniscript is just an encoding of script. So it's the problems with trying to construct one of those scripts for yourself without using something like policy and Miniscript is that it's very easy to get things wrong. You can very easily lock up funds accidentally. You can have hidden spending paths that you didn't realize you had that could allow either parties in your multi-party protocol to steal your funds or a hacker to steal your funds. There's just so much that can go wrong when you try and start constructing your own script. So yeah, I certainly think the way to go so there's still work to do to finalize like the first version of Miniscript. But I certainly think that's going to be the way to go if we're going to be writing scripts ourselves, complex scripts, and perhaps tweaking them depending on the like demands or interests of particular projects, because they all want different scripts, presumably, and lots of different combinations of multi-sigs and time locks and hash locks, whatever. So Miniscript is not yet finalized or in core. Dorosi is doing work to get that into core. That's been a long-term project. So this is the core wallet, obviously. There are a few open questions, like does policy Miniscript ignore these multi-signature protocols where only one single key and one single signature go on chain? Like, do you just effectively put a pub key into your policy, and then policy Miniscript doesn't know anything about these complex multi-signature protocols? Or do you have like, does Miniscript actually tell you to use Musig and Frost because it's more efficient and like less data is going on chain? They're kind of open questions, and certainly updating the policy to Miniscript compiler is going to be a big project potentially. This would be like the Miniscript compiler constructing that Taproot tree for you. So you basically say, like, these are all the conditions I want. I think I'm likely to spend from this one, but I might not spend from these others. And then the Miniscript compiler would construct that Taproot tree for you. Very ambitious. Sankit will tell you more whether we'll be able to get there. But still, the running theme is there's still so much work to do now that we have Taproot. And on various projects, we're kind of just scratching the surface. And we're certainly nowhere near the end destination for enabling a lot of this Taproot functionality. So Oliver will be talking about Taprooted Lightning later. I'll briefly go over I chatted to him a couple of days ago just to check I wasn't going to just repeat what he's going to say later. So I'll say a couple of things on Lightning. There are some people who are very enthusiastic about upgrading Lightning for Taproot. TBUS has a great doc. I did say all my GIFs would be Drake ones, but I lied. Anyway, that's TBUS. So yeah, there's a lot of enthusiasm, but it's a big project in itself. So as I was saying, the Lightning implementations, as far as I know, all support closing a channel to a pay-to-Taproot address. Like, again, everyone should, Lightning, wallets, etc. Opening a channel from a pay-to-Taproot address is a work in progress. And then there's various questions, like, are we going to use this new Taproot multisig opcode, or are we going to wait for Musig? Is the Lightning template scripts going to use the Taproot tree? PTLCs is a whole other problem. So with HDLCs, you have a hash and a preimage, and the preimage goes from the destination back to the source. If we're going to have PTLCs, you're going to have the equivalent of a private key to a public key getting exchanged back from the destination to the source. And so it's not just a question of upgrading a channel between peers. It's like, can we use PTLCs from source A to destination B. And that's going to be a real problem because it's not just upgrading a channel, it's like looking at the whole route and checking that PTLCs are enabled from the source to the destination. Long-term project, lots to discuss, barely scratching the surface. So one thing there has been quite a bit of work on so far on Lightning that I don't think Oliver's going to cover later is upgrading Lightning Gossip. So obviously with music, if Lightning was to upgrade to using music, rather than the 2 of 2 with 2 signatures and 2 pub keys going on chain, it would only be 1 pub key and 1 signature going on chain. So it would be very difficult to identify on chain what were channel opens and channel closes. But currently Lightning Gossip still gossips which UTXO you're committing to when you open a channel. So you're getting the privacy benefit on the blockchain, but if anybody, Chainalysis or any of these bad guys, is monitoring gossip, they still can currently determine like which UTXO you've committed to. So ideally, we would sever that link entirely, and we'd have a gossip protocol on the Lightning Network where you're able to prove that you had those funds to open a channel, and not actually say which UTXO it is. There's been various discussions on how to do that. So far, the conclusion, sadly, has been that a lot of the like cryptographic magic, like ring sigs and ZK proofs, aren't mature, have very large proofs, which makes it problematic to use like new cryptographic magic to achieve that severing of gossip ties. Possibly you could just commit to a small UTXO and then make lots of large channels because you've committed to a single small UTXO, but obviously that's opening up a partial DOS vector because you could prove that you own 0.1 Bitcoin and then open channels with 10 Bitcoin, and you don't actually own 10 Bitcoin. So still in discussion, but there has been movement in terms of upgrading Lightning Gossip. There's other questions like, do we use stuff like Minisketch and do a big gossip update, or do we just stick to Taproot stuff? And yeah, still lots and lots to discuss, still scratching the surface. The differing views on what should be prioritized. I just have 2 people up there, Z-Man and AJ, but various people have different levels of enthusiasm / time to prioritize this. Yeah, it's gonna take a lot of work, and especially with if you went to the Lightning event a couple of days ago, like the spec process is like 2 implementations, implementing a new feature and like formalizing a particular spec or bolt. So it's not just a case of like an individual implementation, implementing it and running with it. Like we kind of want compatibility across implementations on the Lightning Network, ideally. I'll skip that because I think I'm coming up on time. There's some interesting stuff on Liquid. Obviously, Taproot is activated on Liquid, but there's new opcodes on Liquid. It'd be really cool if we get simplicity on Liquid. That certainly seems a strong candidate for a future soft fork. So simplicity is just a complete replacement of script itself. There are lots of problems with script. As we were saying, that Miniscripts try and resolve some of those problems, but simplicity would be just a complete replacement of of script, and at least for that Tapleaf version, just taking script out completely. There are other protocols. Hopefully, like before Taproot activated, there was lots of enthusiasm for all these off-chain protocols using Schnorr and Taproot. Hopefully that enthusiasm will come back. Like now we've got Schnorr, I don't know why people aren't like revisiting like all the ideas they had and all the enthusiasm there was to build all these off-chain protocols now that we've got Schnorr. Yeah, hopefully people will digest the fact that we do actually have Schnorr signatures on chain now, and all the cool ideas that they had for using Schnorr are now possible. Lots of ideas for future possible soft forks. We'll hear about some of them at the conference. But yeah, as I said, let's, as a community, be very slow and cautious and ensure that whatever is in the next soft fork, whenever that is the best possible proposal for Bitcoin and won't be replaced by something superior in a year or two afterwards. So I think I'll end there. I don't know if I have any time for questions. I wanted to, yeah, okay. One?
Okay.
One question. No?
Yeah, just get up and shout. Okay. Yeah, you mentioned, well, my question is, how often do you work on Bitcoin Core, right? How often do you look at other wallet implementations and other wallet node implementations, also looking at these sort of things and giving you reference?
So I tried to follow Bitcoin Core and the Lightning spec. I feel as if I'm stretched way too thin, doing that. I do follow Merch's wiki site to see what the community adoption of Taproot stuff is. I'm aware that Lalu and Oliver have got a bunch of Taproot stuff into BTCD, which is the Go full-node implementation, alternative implementation to Core. So yeah, I try to monitor it at a high level, but yeah, I feel as if I'm stretched way too thin just trying to follow Core and Lightning, but doing my best. Yeah, okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
So